Jeremy Fry, Kansas City. So I wanted to be an orthodontist just like my dad. And my dad was an orthodontist and wanted to follow in his footsteps. And I respected the business that my dad had created as a young person growing up, and kind of being more of an entrepreneur in this space of orthodontics, and rubbing shoulders with the Ron Redmonds of the world, and the Bob Brays of the world, and Gibb Snow. My dad was in a lot of business-oriented study clubs, and I just loved the idea of these progressive thinkers, not just thinking about orthodontics as a treatment for teeth, but also as a business to help families and help our family and grow a business, which I found very exciting. It does mean very much similarly the idea of building things. I enjoy as a philosophy. I like making something from nothing. I think there's a part of the secret to life, which is taking something that isn't there and making something or creating it better than it currently is, whether it's a marriage, whether it's children, whether it's a business, whether it's some malocclusion that you have to fix on a patient, and transforming their lives by building their confidence. And so I think orthodontics does allow me to scratch that itch of what I find is important in life, which is continuing to build great things. Well, I think orthodontics is one of the ways. There are obviously more than one that does provide an avenue for at least on the surface, younger people to have those awkward stages of life have an intervention, and to allow people in orthodontics to ultimately help those awkward stages. But that's not just for young people, obviously, as we know, and increasingly more with adults. But I think it does allow for people within society to feel better about themselves, which is, I think, critical nowadays, especially with what we're seeing in the mental health arena, and the way people are feeling about themselves, the confidence or the lack thereof that is seemingly prevalent more than it used to be. So, our hope, our hope as a profession, I think, is to impact society to better those issues, if at all possible. And I think that orthodontics does serve a great role for that, for society as a whole. Well, most people don't know that I'm actually a producer of a children's animated television series, which is kind of a fun thing. It's something that is still kind of in the pilot stage. We've got our first draft of our animated pilot that's done. We're going through it, and it's actually a tooth-related show relating to kind of this upward mobility of the daughter of the Queen of the Tooth Fairies, who is wanting to not follow the lineage and grow up and be a tooth collector like her mom, but she wants to join the defenders of Emperor Decay and the defenders of the plaque gunkies, and join the Brush Brigade. And the name is Brush Brigade. So it's kind of a fun project that I have going on right now.
Great. You have to let me know when.
Yeah, we even have stuffed animals. So this is Beazle. He's one of our characters, and it's going to be something. It'll be fun.
Yeah, sounds great.
Well, I think the easy answer is to go towards the hard skeletal issues that some people present with. I honestly think the hardest cases to treat are patients that have expectations that are outside of what we as orthodontists can achieve, and whether that's through just the actual correction of what they're wanting to correct, or meeting them emotionally where they need to be met, whether it's a TMJ problem that seemingly is a dental thing, or an orthodontic related thing that we can help with where it may not be just that. I think understanding that from the beginning is the hardest thing about treating orthodontics, and identifying what is the root cause of what's bringing that patient in the door, as opposed to maybe the nuts and bolts of moving teeth around. Well, I mean, the prevalence of Invisalign is obviously one of the biggest changes in aligner therapy. My dad was, in 1997, was asked to be on the alpha test team for Invisalign and be the first to do Invisalign here in Kansas City. And so it was something I was kind of raised in as it was growing. And the JCO was actually fairly pivotal in allowing it was a resource for those that were dabbling in this new technology to have a voice and to be able to show what it could do. And Invisalign has dramatically changed dentistry and orthodontics and overall. Probably the biggest change in innovation. I think, obviously there's a lot of new technology, and how's AI going to factor into that, whether it's Invisalign or through bracket building with some of these newer technologies of custom brackets. But I really do think that the modality change of aligners to braces is definitely the biggest change. I might take a different tack than most people have. In 10 years, I'm not sure it's going to be that different. I think everybody would want to say the growth of AI and the changes that are going to happen, whether it's that AI with Invisalign or aligners or some components. I think there is going to be changes that'll come with the convenience for patients. Same day aligners, for example, have been a big challenge to Invisalign because of the advent of having 3D printers in offices and that being a model that some have taken in lieu of doing Invisalign. So I think there's probably going to be a change as it relates to more ironically direct to consumer opportunities that are driven by doctors, that are driven by maybe Invisalign or these technologies, as aligner technology therapies. But generally speaking, I'm a futurist. I like to look at that stuff. I think 10 years is maybe not quite far enough to see a transformative change, but I'm often wrong on that stuff too. I think that could be something that could sneak up and get us. My first interaction with a JCO was actually, this is a funny story. So the first time I remember mentioning the JCO in my lexicon was in my orthodontic school interviews. I was interviewing at a couple of spots, and one of the interviewers asked me what journals I had ever read in orthodontics. And I was stumped. And I was thinking back on my dad's desk at what would he have had there. And I remember saying, the JCO. And I remember the JCO because it was easy to remember. And I remember that this one academic had some thoughts about the JCO versus some of the others. And I thought, well, my dad has contributed to the JCO, I think. And so I was kind of put off by it. I decided not to go to school there, which was probably a good choice. Then once I did go to residency, I was there at USC with Dr. Keim, who at the time was head honcho, so to speak, there, and Dr. Sinclair and Ron Redmond and those leaders in our profession that were my teachers, as well as my my introduction into the importance of the JCO and what was going on there, and I carry those friendships with me still, and I think that's such a great tradition that has been carried on, and so residency all the way through, and then into some of the editing that I've done, and been fortunate to contribute as much as needed to the profession has been a wonderful experience. JCO is a forum that allows for individual orthodontists or groups of orthodontists to put things out into the world that are unique and different from a treatment perspective, that does allow for pushing the envelope into a maybe not as academic of a review process. It's a way for the everyday orthodontist who is out there doing something unique to showcase that without having the fear or the barriers of entry to get their information out there, and even to have it reviewed in a way that may cause them to do it a little different, and then submit just the same way you would with a manuscript that's more scholarly, but it does have enough of the scholarly component to make it important. That what you're reading has been vetted, so it's not just a crazy idea, but it is something that is almost always something that is different than you'd have ever seen it before in a lot of situations. So I think that it does offer it offers orthodontists and people who are out there kind of pressing the envelope on moving teeth to have a voice in a way that I think a lot of the more buttoned up scholarly journals don't allow as much for the others, don't allow for as much progression into innovative treatments than does the JCO. So I'm very, very happy to be part of that, because I think that's important, especially in a profession like orthodontics, where there are so many different ways to do things, and we're very creative people and very smart people that can all come up with great ideas. And I think it's important to have that voice, and the JCO offers it to those orthodontists. I think the same. I think that JCO offers the profession the ability to advance in a way that doesn't have quite as many barriers to advancement. And I think being a builder of ideas, a builder of business, a builder of people, I believe a lot in the idea of building as it relates to change, and being able to implement change for the betterment of whether it's society or the profession. And the JCO being progressive and allowing progressive thought on treatment modalities facilitates that growth in our profession through change. And I think that's a treasure. Well, it's a double-edged sword. The idea of you want to have the freedom to be able to put a new idea out there and have people read that new idea and have some trust in that new idea. And so what the problem that happens with social media and some of the more wide open venues for either treatment advice or practice advice or whatever it might be, is that you can't listen to them and not know and know that has really been vetted. And I think that a peer-reviewed journal, whether it's an open venue, more of an open venue like the JCO, where it is kind of newer ideas, progressive ideas of ways to treat and practice modalities and management of your practice, the JCO kind of fitting that spot that is a little bit more free-flowing. You can trust it knowing that it has been reviewed, and that people who are maybe more experts in that field have looked at it and said, yeah, this is very interesting. This is something that we should do. Probably more so than, say, the really buttoned up peer-reviewed journals that, has been gone over and over and over and over and over and over again, and can become a little sterile, maybe not quite as innovative as the stuff that comes out of the JCO. So I think it fills that the peer-reviewed avenue it provides trust for the reader. The social media components of it, of the alternatives, are not all bad, but I think that they can have a tendency of leaning more towards a loud minority that maybe hasn't really been vetted enough to trust it completely. The practice management data has always been fascinating to me. And I think that I know it's always hard to get people to talk openly about what their numbers are in their offices and have that valuation of who's doing what out there in the world. And I have used that a lot in terms of percentages of overhead to your top line revenue, and what should we be spending on this and that, or what we should be investing in this and that, or what the innovators in the space are doing for innovators from a practice management perspective are doing as it relates to some of the newer technologies, and how much we should be investing in that. And I think the blending of some of the more financial metrics of, say, the McGill Hill Group, or there's several of those great groups that are out there that talk a lot about that, and kind of marrying that up with your clinical expertise or clinical the kind of the clinical components of what the JCO offers makes it very unique. And I've learned a lot of that combination of how much should we be spending on Invisalign? What share of chair should we have? What percentage actually makes sense for you to run your business and still make money? And some of those conversations that have been had in the JCO have been very, very educational for me. Well, people should subscribe because of the venue that it is, and how it allows the profession to excel in a way that is more of a clinical driven focus compared to some of the other journals and avenues that are out there. And I think that the war that we seem to be waging on print media, and whether it's newspapers versus online, or pick your political news arena that you feel like you fit in, the JCO is one of these types of publications that I really believe we need to support, because it provides orthodontics specifically the avenue to advance the profession, literally one clinician at a time. It can be one idea that ultimately transforms and causes you to figure out a new way to make a new retainer or a tooth mover. There are very few avenues in our space that allow that with the backing of the editors and the trust that provides by being reviewed. And I think that as the war wages against journalism and print journalism specifically, having that magazine come in the mail and being able to see the pictures of what have been created in other offices, I think does allow for the profession to get better and improve. I think we should not only do it online, I think it should be printed. I think it's a great avenue for us as orthodontists to continue to get better. Well, I think the thing that I learned from my dad very early was how important the patient was in the process, and focusing on the patient over maybe what we were taught in school is the ideal or the ABO standard that we all have to follow or should follow. And I think that coming out of school and being a fairly idealistic orthodontist young doctor, thinking that we all know everything and that we come in and tell patients what to do. And I think that's something that I knew inherently I needed to be better at than I was when I got out of school. And I think I focus more on that now, the catering of the care to patients' needs and desires. And sometimes good enough is good enough as opposed to perfection, which is something that is hard to accept as perfectionists that we are. I also think that one thing I did take away from school is this healthy or maybe unhealthy fear of not presenting every option that existed under the sun for patients. And I think that patients come to us because they do require our expertise and at some level like us to tell them what the best option is, even if it is just between maybe two specific options of braces versus Invisalign. I think they do want to know which is best, and trying to interpret what a patient's desires are and what is the best treatment is something that I've had to learn a lot. Instead of presenting 5 different options from jaw surgery to maybe minor tooth movement with Invisalign for the same patient, hone in on, okay, surgery doesn't sound like it's going to be something this patient would ever want to do because of X, Y, and Z conversation. So maybe they are looking more at this option over the other, and maybe not needing to kind of just go through the litany of all of the very specific options that we can do. I think learning how to communicate that to patients in a way that's healthy for their treatment, and also for having them trust in us, I think is very important. Well, I think the same. Following a system, following a treatment system, following a training system for your team. I think one of the this is actually something that is probably more important than most give it credit for. My dad is one that is similar to many orthodontists out there that have a lot of wonderful staff members, had a lot of wonderful staff members, and really empowered our people to actively use their brains along with the doctor using their brains throughout a day in treating patients. And I think as a practicing orthodontist, we oftentimes think we're the smartest person in the room, and that we know every answer, and that we can utilize our own intellect to solve all the problems. But if you have trained your team and you've empowered your team to think instead of just being a doer of what you tell them to do, and actually have them look in the patient's mouth, tell you what they think needs to happen, oftentimes you'll get better ideas than would have come out of my head from time to time. And so I think that there is a teamwork that is necessary in orthodontics that we oftentimes overlook. And I think that would be a piece of advice I'd give anybody that's out there is trust your team. You always have the final say, but make sure that you train them well and empower them empower them to make decisions. And honestly, it makes them happier. They want to be engaged. They want to feel like that they're fulfilling their own desires to learn. And I think being that teacher as well as the doctor is a very important skill. Well, residents are in an interesting spot, because the schools are set up to teach the basics of orthodontics and to and the mechanics of how teeth move, and they should use tried and true old school methods of teaching that information in a way that may be different than what is taught out, not taught, but is utilized in private practice. And as a resident, you have to have an open mind to the old school way of doing it, and then transition to some of the new throughout your residency, and then ultimately have a very wide breadth of ideas and knowledge about how you can treat people's malocclusion and straighten their teeth. And I think actually back to the JCO impact on my life. Growing up around the Ron Redmond and going to school at USC and having Peter Sinclair and Bob Keim there in the department, the JCO was a big part of me as a resident, a young orthodontist, understanding that there were crazy other ideas that people were doing out there in the world of orthodontics that we weren't being taught, that did open my eyes as a resident. So I think that the first thing I would say is just open your mind to learning everything that you can, even the old stuff that you may find that you won't do later. But I also think that it's very important to start expanding your knowledge of financial well-being for yourself, and understanding that running a business is not just straightening teeth, and how do you interact with your team, and learn some things that aren't just inherently orthodontics. And you have to seek that stuff out, and you have to seek out those instructors that may have a great business that you might want to learn from, or start reading or doing podcasts outside of the idea of just moving teeth, and helping yourself really understand how to run a business, and really manage your family and manage your finances, and how to be a good steward of what you might be able to create in financial wealth, and how to help your community, and what's the right way to manage all that. I think is a very important skill that you have to learn. Don't just wait till you get out of school to learn it. Learn it while you're at school. It's an important time of life. Well, this is not tricky. I think my best clinical parole is to follow a system. And I think that orthodontists are notorious for dabbling in things and chasing shiny objects, and I'm no different. I think forcing ourselves to pick a system, whatever that system is, whatever you want it to be as an orthodontist, and follow it, and have a system with which to change from that system when it's not working for whatever reason, and create an overarching treatment philosophy that you follow for the specific patients that have those needs that system would address. And I think it's important that we do that, not only for patients, but also to keep ourselves from thinking about too many things at the same time, and really honing in on our treatments, because I think we do a disservice to patients by doing so many different kind of clinical things, trial and error on this and that, and treatment times end up getting longer. The patient care of patients get longer, and they become more unhappy the longer that it goes. And I think the more that we can streamline our treatments, the better the patient experience will be, and also the better that our staff interaction will be with our team. And I think the better we'll sleep at night, not wondering what if we would have done this or that a little differently. It would be a little bit more of a comfort knowing that we know how this is going to go, because we do this the same way most every time.